Okay.
Audio amigo, take two.
And we're back. So we just did a little intro and Birdie interrupted us, but basically wanted to say welcome to the first ever sit down with my man Steve Robotham from SR Fishing. Super Ridiculous Fishing is what it stands for, right?
Absolutely.
Not his initials, Steve Robotham. It's Super Ridiculous Fishing. And this is like a long time coming. We've been friends since before college. So like our relationship started 15, 20 years ago. And I don't know, like we both have been guides now for 5, 10 years. Full-time guides, like Steve started a long time ago. And anyways, this is a long time coming. So sit back. We're going to do a Q&A. We both did a little renaissance.
Reconnaissance.
Recon
mission.
All right, cut that. We're going to do a Q&A session where we both asked our Instagram following, ask a guide anything. So we've got some pretty good questions. We've got some pretty silly ones. And let's just get right into it. Do you want to start?
We can, yeah.
You got any that you saw that stood out to you want to talk about here?
There's quite a few. Yeah, we'll just touch on. One of the questions was actually how long you've been a guide. Like Cal said, I started in 2004, my first year out of high school. But at that point, it was pretty much part-time, just in the summers, building a client base. I didn't actually go full-time until 2018. But yeah, it's been great. I've been enjoying it very much. Still learning lots and happy to be doing what I'm doing, man. I love it. Yeah.
It's a good time for show.
Yeah.
I started in 2015. Clean and dirty. Quick and dirty answer. There's a good one. This question came from Monk. Monk Works Fishing, says advice for individuals starting their guiding business. So I think we can both shed some light on this topic. First of all, you got to be the best fisherman the world's ever seen. Second of all, you should have a boat, but I guess it depends on what kind of guide you want to be. You really just need to know the body of water that you want to be a guide on. First of all, like what would you say is the first thing that for being a guide? I don't know. It's like,
I mean, a big part of it is experience. You can't show up to a lake or a river or whatever it is that you're doing with no experience and expect to be successful day in and day out. Like I fished, you and I both. We grew up on Simcoe, spent a lot of time learning it, pre-navionics and all that stuff. I mean, navionics will probably shorten the curve or shorten the learning time at this point. But yeah, growing up, we spent a ton of time. Simcoe's a lot of water. There's a lot of dead water. And yeah, to really be successful, you have to put time in to understanding the lake. You could have spots, but spots don't necessarily mean anything. You go to that spot, there's no fish. Well, what are you going to do now? Mm-hmm. You have to have that experience to fall back on.
I think you nailed it for sure. Experience is a big one. I touched on it a little bit in my other video about if guides make lots of money. Someone asked me a very similar question, like how do you get started in the business? Yeah. And I think you definitely have to be a people person. Yeah. Like you can't just feel like I'm a great fisherman, I can do this and I want to get paid to go fishing. It's like you genuinely have to enjoy taking people on your boat and putting them on fish and watching them catch fish. It's not at all about you catching fish and you fishing. And it's like, I'll fish, sorry to cut you off. It's like, I'll fish if we're having a really tough day and it's like, it's an extra line in the water to try and, figure out the puzzle for that day. Or if we're having an absolute stellar day and it's like, I do want to get in on the action and it's not going to take away from the clients, I'll get a line in as well. But generally on a day-to-day basis, it's like, I'm just sitting there in the boat, looking at my map, reading the sonar, watching people's rod tips, making sure everyone's doing everything right to make sure that they get on fish. I've heard of horror stories of guides that like, they might get upset at people losing fish and they take it way too seriously. And it's like, it's not about that. And I said it before, like, if you want to like become a better fisherman and you want to challenge yourself, maybe you should go into the tournament path of fishing, right? Like maybe not being a guide. It's like you should pursue tournament fishing if that's like your mentality.
Being a guide isn't for everyone. It sounds like a great job and it is. Like I love what I do, but it's not for everyone. Like you have to, like Cal said, genuinely love watching people catch fish. For me, at risk of sounding arrogant here, I've caught so many fish in my life. It takes a real special fish now to
Get excited.
really get my adrenaline up. Whereas I can get that adrenaline from watching a 10-year-old kid catch a 3-pound smallmouth.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, I like absorb their excitement.
Not
in
even
a
kids.
way.
Like you were telling me about that one client you have
I've
from
had-
the States where he shakes literally every time he catches a fish over 5 pounds.
5 pounds, yeah,
you know,
for
and,
sure.
like you can't help but like feel their emotion.
I love it. And that, yeah, you don't fish. Like I fish less now as a full-time guide than I did before I started guiding.
Yeah.
You know, I spend a
can
ton of
agree
time
with
on the
that.
water, but I spend a lot less time fishing. Yeah, there's guys out there, not to knock anybody, that, you know, will guide to get their own fishing trip paid for. And that's not the right
that's
way
not
to
what
go
it's
about
about.
it. Like, you have to be guiding people. And then, like you said, as far as casting goes, I've got some regulars that want me to fish with them, and I will fish with them. If it's a super tough day and we're not getting bites, like you said, again, I'll pick up a rod, make some casts, see if I can figure something out that I can then pass on to the clients.
Yeah.
But it's very rare for me to start out the day with a fishing rod in my hand.
For sure. I think that answers that question. I don't know. It's how to get started.
I don't even remember what the question was at this point.
It's how to get started,
Yeah,
how to get your guide
yeah.
business started. So having experience on the water, having the knack for putting people on fish, or having like genuine fulfillment out of putting people on fish. So like take your friends, take your family fishing, see if you have the patience to put them on fish and have them get your stuff tangled up and break your stuff, and see if you can still want to do it on a daily basis. You know, just start on the weekends by taking your friends and family. And if you still enjoy it beyond then, go for it. A question I actually get asked a lot, it's too bad it wasn't in our Q&A, but I'm going to bring it in, is have I lost the passion for fishing since becoming a guide? And it's like, no, not one bit. If anything, it's growing each year that passes. Sometimes it gets hard to get out of bed in the morning, but that's just like a personal thing. where
That's
it's
like any job,
Yeah,
in
like,
a sense.
you know, I'm not, you know, bummed to get out of bed to go to work. I'm just like extremely exhausted, and I wish I could sleep in a little bit longer. But then once I'm up and going, I am super jacked to put the boat in the water or get on the ice and go do our thing.
Yeah. There comes times in the season for me, and maybe I'm a little bit different there. There comes times in the season where I need a vacation or a few days off or whatnot.
It's just like anything though. It's
Yeah.
still work. It's still a job.
I do still love fishing, and it's funny because on some of my days off, I will still go fishing, but I'll do something different.
Yeah,
if
when
I
you go on
spend
vacation, you're still going fishing.
if I spend a whole week guiding smallmouth on Simcoe and then I have a day off, I might go fish muskie. Just something you know,
to
to
shake
break
it
it up. I'm still fishing. I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah.
But I might go fish muskie or something just a little bit different. And then, you know, I got into hunting the past few years too, which is kind of my outdoors thing away from fishing if I don't feel like doing fishing. But I'm still outdoors, and it's still, there's parallels between the two.
Definitely. I'm listening. I'm just looking for the next
No, you
question.
do your thing, man.
This next one was from John Walker. I thought was pretty interesting. He said, how many guides are on Simcoe and surrounding lakes? And do we all share spots, or is it every man for themselves? So in terms of the spots, I think it's a little bit of both. Like you definitely have some guides that definitely work together. Like
Yeah.
Steve and I have definitely, like we'll fish the same zones quite often. Same with me and Outdoor Junkies. Like if it's pretty often, like if it's lake trout season, you're going to see all the guides in the same general zone on the lake. And, you know, that's a great indication of where the fish are. We definitely share spots. And then there are a couple of guys that I think that like to keep to themselves, which is totally fine. Like, you know.
Yeah, it varies too. Like you've got friendships in the guiding community that I don't necessarily have, and vice versa. It's not that people hate each other or whatnot, but you know, we have closer friend circles for sure.
Yeah.
And I've got a network of guys that I work with. You've got a network of guys you work with. We're obviously included with each other, kind of the overlap there. But there's been times where, you know, we bail each other out on days where it's tough.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I can think of one, and we talked about it actually the other day. Callum and I both had groups guiding on a shoal on Simcoe, and my guys were catching fish, But Cal's guys were putting a whooping on them. Like, you guys were catching them.
Mm.
And I remember texting Cal.
Molly fishing, yeah? Yeah.
I text Cal and I'm like, what is going on, man? Because I'm seeing fish and we're not getting them to go. And he sends me a picture of the bait they're using. And the funny thing is, we were using the exact same bait, but a different color fleck in the bait.
Yeah.
And as soon as we switched over, it was just fish, fish, fish. And, you know, there's been kind of vice versa occasions where stuff like that's happened too. Mm-hmm. But without having that network of guys to work with, you know, I might have gone in that particular day with an average day, whereas it turned into a fantastic day because of that network. So that almost goes back to get into guiding, when you're getting into guiding.
Yeah.
A lot of our success comes down to the networks that we've built over the years.
Yeah.
Guys we can rely on for real information.
For sure. And it's not just guides either. Like they're local weekend guys, just friends of mine. And it's like, if someone's on the water and I'm having a slow day, I'm going to ask anyone I know who might be out there, what's happening for you? Like, I'm going to communicate to everybody. I have a really good network of people that I'm always kind of referring to, and it helps out sometimes. And, you know, I'll give them information. They share information with me. It kind of goes both ways. And it's not just with guides. In terms of how many there are, I don't know. It seems to be growing each year.
It's hard to put
Some
a
guys
number
come
on
and
it.
go. I would say there's like half dozen to a dozen pretty regular guides on the lake.
Yeah, as far as like full-time guides, there's maybe a half dozen that I'm like in
I don't
touch
even want to
with
list them
or
off because I feel like I would forget someone, and
Yeah.
then that might like cause some problems or something. It's like
Yeah.
they're out there, they're available. I got respect for all of them. So
Yeah, but then, I feel like every year there's a number of guys that, you know, start up and
yeah, people come and go.
Yeah.
Definitely, like since I've been started, like
A
since
lot of turnover.
2015, there's been a lot of turnover.
A lot of
for
turnover.
sure. A lot of turnover. That's a great way to put it.
well, it's not, like I said, it's not an easy job. And I think it would kill the passion for fishing for a lot of people.
If the competition was too much.
No, just making your passion work. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like, because I took a bit of a break from guiding when my son was born, and it was almost needed on top of just needing time at home as well. Because at that stage in my life, I was still in love with fishing, and taking people fishing and not fishing myself put a damper on it for me. Whereas now, as I've kind of matured in it and spent more time doing it, I've developed that passion in a different way in helping people catch fish, which is very, very different from what it was when I first started. So yeah, just because you love fishing doesn't necessarily mean you'll love guiding.
For sure. Absolutely. You got any questions there? There's something. I thought you had something. Get your phone
I
out,
got
bro.
a few. It's rude.
Any
It's
advice
rude
for
to look at my
individuals
phone.
starting their guide business? When will we get some ice? When do you think Simcoe will freeze over? I'll touch on this briefly if anyone wants to know. Like, I don't even really want to talk about it because
It's up in the air, man. Mother Nature controls it all.
yeah.
It's cold right now, but it's windy, and it's not going to do anything with this wind.
Yeah. I think this week there's a couple days where we're like getting close to -20 and there's low wind. I'd say if Simcoe doesn't freeze this week, there's a very slim chance the main lake will freeze at all this year. Hold on a second. I'm going to let this cat outside. And we're back. There was a question. I can't find it now. So forgive me, whoever asked this question. But he said, I'm not even going to look at my phone because I looked for it a few times. Maybe it expired or whatever. But he said, any stories about the ones that got away?
That was on mine.
Oh,
That's why you
I
can't
couldn't
find it. That's why you can't find it. It said biggest catches and the one that got away. I could talk for hours about this.
Yeah. All right.
I could.
Get in close. Grab a seat.
Yeah. Get some popcorn.
What's like the first story that comes to your mind about the one that got away? Like,
There's two that come to mind right away, and I'm sure a lot would come up after that. First one would be a muskie at Restool when I was younger. So it was the first time I'd ever gone to specifically target muskie, and I had not the proper gear for it at all. Like, I used my bass flipping stick, and I bought like a big bucktail spinner, but I had my bass net, everything like that, not prepared for it at all. And we were at the campground up there, and I'd lost a muskie, like a pretty good one, the first day we were there. And then I went out in the morning on my own, and I'm just fishing the lake. Like, we had no mapping of the lake at that point or anything. So I'm just kind of going along, casting at shorelines. And I had the 50+ inch muskie rise up from deep water. First turn in the figure eight, it eats it. And I set the hook on this rod that's way too light. And I've got it thrashing at the boat, and I'm trying to scoop my little bass net underneath this thing. And I get its head in, and it thrashed the other way, and one of the treble hooks caught on the netting itself.
I know where this is going.
And I'm like, because my rod and gear wasn't set up, every time it's thrashing, it's pulling a little bit of drag out.
Yeah.
So I'm like reaching further and further and further as I'm going. And I have like nothing underneath this fish anymore. It's just the treble hook caught on the net, and it thrashed the other way. And it sat there for what felt like an eternity. It was probably like a half second, but at the time it felt like it was 10 minutes. And I like reached down and tried to scoop it, and it swam away. And I remember I sat there just quiet. I never said a word. I was by myself. I'm like, but I will talk to myself. I don't care. But I sat there quiet for a long time. I was shaking. It was the biggest fish I'd ever hooked at that time. And I had it right there. And I watched it eat on the figure eight. It was just, everything was so sick other than losing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I finally was like ready to start fishing again, I was like, I'm not ready to cast. I was still shaking, but I wanted to fish. So I was like, I'm just going to troll this shoreline. And I don't think I was 30 seconds into that troll, and I got like a mid 40, which was a great fish. It kind of like brightened my spirits up.
Yeah.
But I still think about that fish, and that's 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. Great story.
And then the other one, it's funny because realistically, it was not a really big fish. It was like a 4.5 pounder, but just the circumstances around it, I think.
4.5 pound what?
Largemouth.
Okay.
So it was one of the first tournaments I'd ever done. It was with my dad, and we'd borrowed a buddy's tin boat with like a 9.9. Like, we didn't have our own boat till I was 15 or 16. So yeah, we'd borrowed a buddy's boat to go fish this tournament. I don't even remember the name of the lake, to be honest with you. It was out east of here anyways. And we had no idea what we were doing. We just liked to fish. But it was like a 15 or 20 boat derby. It wasn't a big tournament, but it was our first one. And we're going along, and there's these lily pads. And this is how like unknowledgeable I was at the time. I cast a crankbait to these lily pads. A crankbait of all things.
God bless you.
And I get bit, and I set the hook, and at the time I probably would have told you it was a 7 pounder, but now looking back is probably a 4.5, maybe 5 pounder.
Yeah.
But we caught a few other fish earlier in the day. I'm going to go back a little. And both the other fish we'd caught, my dad had his gear on top of the net, and it was a struggle to get the net out to get this fish. So I was giving him crap for it the whole day. Make sure you don't put it on top of the net. Make sure. And we ended up losing that fish at the boat while he was dealing with the rods all tangled in the net. And I remember at the time I was so mad at him. We still did fairly well in the tournament. Not as well as we could have done. Mm-hmm. And yeah, at the time I was so mad. But I mean, looking back now that he's not here, I'm like, I'd love to have him fuck up like that again. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's another one that just pops up. Like, it's not even close to the biggest fish, but the circumstance around it just makes me think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on. I'd love to hear.
So one that I always think of, and I tell this story pretty often to my clients, and it was a client's fish, and we didn't even hook it. It's a smallmouth that we saw.
Deep water?
No, not even deep water. That's another one. That's a story where we hooked one. I know what you're talking about, where we were trolling jerk baits for smallmouth and freaking hooked a giant. But this one is even more because it happened in like 4 feet of water. You could see the fish clear as day, like you're making eye contact with this fish. Yeah. And what it was, I had 2 older gentlemen in the boat, and we're trolling spy baits. It's a beautiful, sunny, calm day, early bass season, like end of June, whatever.
Yeah.
And we've caught some fish and whatnot. We were actually lake trout fishing. So this is why we were unprepared to like throw anything at this big fish that we saw. So we were lake trout fishing all morning. These guys are like, yeah, let's try for bass now. Let's go for it. So I'm like, yeah, rigged up some spy baits, started trolling them or strolling them, the bass guys would say. Strolling spy baits. Buddy hooks a smallmouth. And as he's fighting it, you know, having a great time, the fish is like dogging around the boat, circling. As we're fighting that fish, another fish like emerges and is like almost trying to eat the bait out of the other smallie's mouth. It's hooked. Like this hooked smallmouth has a bigger fish trying to eat the bait out of its mouth, but the bigger fish dwarfed the one that we had on. It was literally twice the size of the one we had on. And I told you guys, like, holy smokes, like, give this fish some slack, shake it off, and try to like get this bigger fish like hooked up. Like lose that fish you have on and let's try to catch that bigger one. And if I was prepared, I would have had a drop shot or a Simcoe or something ready to throw at it. But again, we were just like, you know, fishing for bass for the last half an hour of the day. And this happened. And I'm just like, shake it off, thinking like, this is like a 6+ pounder. It's a big fish. Lose that fish you've got on, try to catch this bigger one. We couldn't lose the fish. End up like netting it, bringing it into the boat, and the bigger fish just disappears into the depths. And when we unhooked this fish and realized how big it was a 5.5 pounder, and it was dwarfed by this other one. So it's just like, oh my God, how big was that other fish? If it was twice the size of the fish that we just netted, that's 5.5 pounds. So it was just like that one. That is one that always stands out to me.
That's the beauty of Simcoe.
Yeah,
it really is. And I could think of a story with you years ago on Kempethville. That's almost the same thing, where at the original spot, which, you know, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hooked a 6 pounder. It was just over 6 pounds.
Yeah.
And the fish that followed it
dwarfed it. Big black eyes on it, stripes.
That was the first fish.
Glass calm.
It's crazy that we live on this lake, and I can say the first, not the only, the first fish I've seen that could have been a 10 pounder.
Or more. Like it was like 10 or more. Very likely or very possible. Just based on like when you're fighting a 6 pounder and it looks like a 3 pounder compared to the one that's swimming with it. It's like, it's hard to fathom. It's hard to comprehend while it's happening. And it's usually not till after the fact when you're like looking at the fish you just caught. It's like, this is a 6 pounder, man. How big was that one? Like, holy shit. Damn.
It's wild. We're so lucky to live on this lake. And
I've mentioned it before. It's like anytime you're fishing Simcoe, doesn't matter if it's in the beginning of the season or the very end of the season, any cast could be like the next record.
Any cast.
Or an absolute trophy smallmouth. It's a super special lake.
So it just happens. Like I've caught 3 8-pounders in my life out here, and they were within 3 weeks of each other.
Really?
Yeah. And then just all of a sudden,
a bit of a cold streak.
Measly 7-pounders after that, you know. But
yeah,
it could just happen.
It does. I remember like Bill Walker telling me the same thing. He went out for like 2 hours in November. He was putting his boat away.
Yeah. And
he said he got a 35-pound stringer. He said he got like 2 fish that had to be close to 8 pounds, 2 fish that were over 7, and a couple 6s to go with it. And it's like happened in 2 hours, just a few casts, no problem. It's like, it's a crazy fishery. And when you're dialed in too, like when you're throwing what they want that day in the right spot, it's like it happens so easy.
Yeah.
You know, the 30-pound stringer that my brother weighed in the Bass Pro Shops Open.
Yeah.
It's like we literally put that bag together in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, it happened so fast, and it was just like, it happened so fast and then it was over too.
Yeah.
Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. But you got a because it happened early for you guys that day, right? Yeah. So at least you want to upgrade, obviously, through the day.
Relatively early. Like, we fished for an hour. We fished our way to the spot.
Right.
And there was nothing happening anywhere. And then I'm like, well, I got this zone where I've been doing really well with my clients, right? Let's go down there and check it out. And we just pounded them.
Yeah.
So that was pretty sweet.
It's a comfortable feeling when you're early in the day, though, when you have a big bag.
And then Donnie and I did the same thing the very next week after. We actually showed up late to the tournament.
That's not your first time either.
Yeah.
Or you and Jay years ago. Oh my God. Show up at like 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Blast off is at 7:30. My buddy Jay and I rolled out of bed, hung over at like 11. And the tournament committee was like leaving the blast off site because they were going for breakfast. I'm like, what? You guys want into the tournament? We're like, yeah. And they all kind of like looked at each other like, I guess. Like, sure. Like, yes. They let us in. we didn't do bad, but we didn't win.
I think it's second place.
Was it?
And
Yeah.
big fish.
Second place and big fish.
I remember that because it was so ridiculous.
Yeah. And we only had 4 fish too, if I remember. I don't think we even had a limit.
I think it was only a 4-fish limit at that
Oh,
time.
maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
I was fishing for 5 all day.
Penalized if you caught your limit.
Yeah. But that was a crazy day too.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that Jay was with me on that. That was like Jay's only tournament, and he caught big fish of the day.
Yeah. It almost, I don't know. It's such a
That's what it's all about,
crazy,
man.
like, it is.
Okay, we should shut it off because that's going to be a pile of editing for me. If you guys made it this far into the video,
Yeah,
drop a comment and let us know what else you want us to talk about or what you'd like us to hear. If you got any questions for us.
Or
hit
if
us
you
up.
even want to see it again.
Yeah.
If you hated it, tell us too.
Yeah, exactly.
Be nice though.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick.
100p. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.